purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them. No hunter can trap them. No.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Fahringer, the producer of this show, and we're on to the third section of addressing the effect the Bible and religion have had on our lives today. I have with me three guests. I have Ed Scharf, historian. I have Harvey Kendall, who is a professor of German, and I have Chet, Chiles, who was now what was it again? It's a criminology, but it was academic criminology. What's the difference between academic criminology and you just study
law enforcement, and the study of both law enforcement and causes of crime and pathology in society.
Yeah, okay, so you study that stuff. Well, that's good. Now, what have you found out? Have you found out anything that we wanted to deal somewhat with the Bible and morality? And do you think that it's a good thing that that the Bible be introduced to prisoners?
I believe in freedom, you know. Mm-hmm. I believe in freedom for free thought, free inquiry for school children, little school children, whether their parents like it or not. Mm-hmm. I believe in the same thing for you and I believe in the same thing for prisoners. Everyone in society should be free. And if they choose to study the Bible, okay, but it shouldn't be fostered on them, you know.
Well, but it is. I read every day. In fact, I faxed you something, Ed, the other day about jumping by parachute.
Parachuting into the prisons as an evangelist.
With Bibles.
But really, is that bad that they do this in the prisons? 99.9% of the people are profound religionists in the prison, so aren't these people just following their flock or going after them?
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I recall one time an inmate came to see me in my office. Yeah. And he had just gotten religion in prison. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to go out and preach the gospel. Yeah. So what he wanted was me to help him get a parole so he could go out and preach the gospel. Well, you know how I responded to him.
How?
Well, there's so much to be taught in here. You know, there's so many sinners right here in prison that you need to stay here and preach to them. And so he stormed out of my office.
But isn't that a case in point of how easy it is to get religion when you're in the prison, or in hopes of early release, basically?
I suppose so. I think it's difficult to say whether a person has gotten religion in the hopes of getting out, or whether, you know, what have you got to look forward to in prison?
True.
See, so anything that's stimulating, inmates latch onto. So. Religion is, if it's offered to them, you know, a lot of inmates will do this it's one way to get out of their cell, for one thing, you know.
Yeah, it certainly is, and get out of reality. But still, it seems to me there's so much. I hate it that they've taken away their education. They used to let them take courses and pay for them. And now they won't do that anymore. I had a letter from one not long ago, and he asked if there was anything I can do. Well, there's nothing I can do because our free thought organizations are all scratching for money. We don't have the great promises that religion have. We have no heaven to offer people. We have no hell to scare the bejesus out of them, excuse me. And so we don't have that appeal, and we don't have the money to advance our cause. And this poor guy, he said, thanks to your Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, I can't continue my education. And he's really racked up a very impressive, I mean, as impressive as I suppose you could be under the circumstances. I'm not sure.
Religion tends to make you more punitive, and you want to be harsher on offenders because of this. And so as we go more move to the right religiously, why, you know, United States is one of the very few industrialized nations that has capital punishment.
I think that's really tacky of us.
Yes, and of course our good Baptist in the White House is all in favor of capital punishment. And you see, religion is a punitive kind of thing. There's much more intelligent ways of handling offenders, you know.
I would think so, and I think education is the greatest. I'm talking about secular education and not religious indoctrination, of course.
Yes. Well, our big problem is separating the concept of religion from the concept of education. Education is based on science and the pursuit of truth with an open mind to change, to know what facts are available. And religion is based on faith. See, so the two, they're not compatible at all.
Well, I know they're not, but I just think that somewhere in there, this science thing ought to have half a chance, rather than people like Charles Colson infiltrating prisons with his wonderful word of the Lord. There is nothing, I could not find very much morality in the Bible. I find really vicious behavior. I find lying. Even God lies constantly. And he cheats, he lies to people and said, I'll do that. Now, how about just the story of Moses trying to get the people out of Egypt, okay? And the appeals to the Pharaoh who said, and then he hardened his heart.
Yes. Catherine, let me say, Charles Colson claims a good success rate in rehabilitating prisoners through religion.
Yeah.
Okay, down through the ages, various schemes to rehabilitate has claimed great success. But you see, after a few years, that they find out this just isn't true. It takes a few years maybe to recidivate, you know. But the success rate just isn't there if you look at it over the long haul.
Over the long haul.
Well, there's been no panacea for rehabilitating offenders.
Well, that's the same thing. They say they have trouble getting figures from AA because they claim a fantastic rate of cure. Not cure, but cope. What do you call it? I am recovering alcoholic.
Sobriety.
Yes, well, sobriety. So, but they really haven't been able to pin figures down that show. And of course, their focus is on that higher power that's going to help you break this vicious
they've gone
addiction.
from kind of an educational approach to an entertainment approach. You talk about the evangelist parachuting into the prison yard.
Yeah.
You look at the Promise Keepers, their approach. I don't see how theirs can be of lasting value. They have two basic themes, football and war. That's their approach. They admit it. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going to have a big rally. It's a pep rally. Everybody gets fired up.
Yeah.
But then the wind sails out.
Yeah.
And so it can't be lasting. But everything seems to be pushing towards an entertaining type thing, even in our prisons. I don't know if Charles Colson's approach was that entertaining like the parachutist that went in, but everybody thought he was going to hit on the barbed wire up there, which would have been interesting if he had.
Yeah.
Wonder if that had been God's will.
Now, Harvey, you had some things you wanted to bring up, and I said yes, and I promptly...
Well, what I was remembering is that at the end of our last program, we had just barely mentioned this concept of greed. I have somewhat facetiously often said that greed is the only real sin. Of course, that's contradictory because I don't believe in sin in the first place, but greed is a very negative force in our society, and it is implanted in religion. It's just a natural part of religion.
Well, it truly is. Everything points. The thing that amused... Go ahead, Chet.
People are valued in the Bible according to how many camels, she-asses, property, how much gold, silver, and all this. That's the way they're valued, you see. And of course, this is incorporated into our economic system. And so we tend to worship the rich, and we get it from the Bible.
Well, what bothers me about this capitalistic system and all this stuff, it's fine and dandy if it worked in that they were introducing decent products that really they were proud of and that were reliable. But So much of it seems to be, I'm gonna do just any old thing. I'll throw something out on the market, and they don't really care about satisfying people that'll come back. I mean, there's another sucker every minute that'll go and buy it. You could keep, like I maintain some of the tourist restaurants on the river. They don't have to try. They've got people down there who will never come back. And what do they care? There's another bunch of tourists coming in. And that's what I mean. Everything is shoddy today. Whenever I go somewhere and buy something, chances are I'm going to have to take something back because it's flawed. And this new business of sticking the washing labels, they're down here now. Well, that's fine. I wish they'd told me, though, before I ruined a blouse, that I was looking for washing instructions. It said 100% cotton. I pitched it in the washing machine, and what did I get? A ruined blouse. So, and that was from that precious coat place that brags so much about. They don't really treat you very fairly when you get when you have a problem. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to the morality in the Bible, because there was a Catholic priest, what was his name, Emmett something, that saw the light, like get out of the church, and he did. And he did a cursory study back in the 1930s, early 30s, I believe, about prison. And he is a Catholic, and he says some terrible things about the way that Catholics raise people and how they raise them so they can justify almost anything, and God will forgive them, and, you know, it goes on and on. And he wrote about, he tried to do a study of how many people in prison came from a religious background. And most of them did, the responses that he got. And then he broke it down into how many Catholics were in a prison as opposed to some of the other religions or Protestants. And in Denver at this time, the percentage of Catholics was not very high, but the percentage of Catholic prisoners was extremely high according to the other figures. So that was interesting. That there's something about Catholicism that has so many people in prison, and
but on
it didn't work.
The other hand, if you were to survey people who are not in prison, you would also get a very high percentage of people who are from a religious background too. So I'm not so sure that the religious aspect has any attribution there. I am reminded, though, of the survey that was taken in approximately 1776. It was right at the beginning of this country's origins, where it was a census, and among the questions was, what is your religious affiliation? Only 15% of the people noted that they were religiously affiliated with anything. And in the most recent census, it was almost 90%. I think it was 88, 89%, something like that, who say that they are religiously affiliated today. And that I'm always amused when I hear Jerry Falwell say we've got to get back to religion.
Well,
if he only knew, if you go back, you would have fewer religious people than we have today.
Well, going back to that religion thing and morality, I'm just saying, look at the state we're in now. If religion worked, shouldn't this country be cleaner and healthier and better off and less crime-ridden and less poverty-stricken than it is? If religion worked the way it's supposed to.
That's certainly true.
I would
strong
think,
morality throughout.
I wrote a facetious letter once to the editor, and it had to do with restrooms across the country. And I said, I've traveled a lot, and I said, I would like to know, I said, every time I go in one, I'm being the maid and picking up things and throwing things away because it's so vile. And I said, who are these people who are messing up restrooms? It must be, you claim it's a Christian country, and there are mostly Christians in it. It must be the Christians who are messing this up, because with about 5 to 8% atheists, which I think is a very wrong, low figure, it couldn't be those people who are doing all this stuff. So my whole point with this ridiculous thing about restrooms is just to show that even on a small scale, tidiness, pride of keeping things clean. I pick up trash every time I go to my used-to-be mailbox, which they took away from me at the request of a building manager. Now, I'm a property owner, and I pay taxes, and do you think the post office would rip out a post office box because I said so? I'll bet never. But anyway, what was I going to say before I got into that? I wanted to get that out of my system. I've been so mad all day I can't see straight. Not at the post office, but at the fact that a manager of a building has more clout than I do. They can't even give me his name. I thought we had a Freedom of Information Act. How did I get off on this? Where were we?
We're talking about morality.
Morality, yes. Well, I'm sure the Bible is responsible for the removal of my mailbox.
You know, I'm amazed at what Harvey was saying. In 1776, only 15%
Yeah, it was
admitted
very
to
low.
religion.
Very low.
This was
yeah.
shortly after they were burning witches, you know.
Yeah, I know, but it's always those little...
You would think, you would certainly want to say, hey, I'm a Puritan pilgrim or something, so...
But remember that the end of the Salem witch hunts came about from pressure from non-religious people. That's what finally stopped it.
Yeah, and the fact that Governor Phipp's wife was being pointed at as a suspicious...
Potential witch.
Potential. Yeah, that was great. It wasn't that he was any swell freethinker, but at least he signed the paper that put a stop to it, so that was great. But I really do not feel that religion is offering what it claims to offer, which is a good moral basis for running things, having a good life with not such high crime rates. I think it's failed miserably, and it's time for them to back off and let scientists and people that got some good sense.
Well, can you really abide by everything in the Bible and
I don't
be
see
moral,
how.
or would you end up being immoral?
What is seething a kid in its mother's milk? Is it cooking a little goat in its mother's milk, or
No.
sort of simmering? Does it mean simmering? Do you take the hair off first? What do you do? But that's one of the 10 Commandments in one version, which is really 13. And that's why I can't understand even the 10 Commandments themselves. What kind of guide is that for a moral life? Don't kill. Any idiot can figure that one out. You don't have to be wildly intelligent. It says nothing in there about, it says about respecting your parents, or what is it? Honor thy parents.
It's just that, I suppose I could go along with the 10 Commandments, but Christians don't go along with the 10 Commandments.
Well, of course not. They have the death penalty.
Yes. And they go to war. And,
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say there's a whole lot wrong with them, but I'm just saying it doesn't take a great brain to think up that it might be better if I didn't go out killing people.
We'll take the first one, shall have no other gods before me. Isn't that the first commandment?
Okay,
We've only
right
got
there.
25,000 scattered in the Christian religion alone. The Methodists don't have the same God that the Catholics do.
Couldn't have, because they
It'd be
worship
impossible.
differently. They believe differently. And each one thinks the other one is wrong. So
take the first one. We're in total violation there.
yeah, it doesn't work, and there's nothing in there about honoring your children. We have terrible child abuse, and we have a very high rate of it here in this city, as well as spousal abuse. And there's nothing to cover that in the 10 Commandments. Nothing. Women are property, and you shouldn't covet your neighbor's ass and his wife. Well, isn't that nice? I mean, that's really uplifting to women, I'll tell you that. So anyway, Harvey, getting back to, you had several other points you wanted to make. And on
the subject of morality, another thing that has been on my mind recently, coming up with the indictment of Henry Cisneros, all because he lied before the FBI, and he lied because he was caught between being a human being and the pressure of our society that says that he can't be a sexual human being. And then when I look at I hate to get into partisan politics here, and I'll try not to, but when I look at the accomplishments that Henry Cisneros has made, when he was a student, the magnificent outlook that he had on life, and his wanting to improve the lot of the have-nots in the world. And then he became the mayor of San Antonio. Well, first of all, he was associated before he was mayor, he was here as a student working on various assignments, and among them was the hemisphere, and he did some valuable things.
He was a professor at UTSA on environmental issues.
Yeah, but even before that, while he was still a student. And then he became mayor. He did several really magnificent things for the city of San Antonio, particularly in the realm of bringing in other money in industries and so forth. And he, of course, made enemies along the way, but he did try to heal this breach between the north and the south of San Antonio, and did a fairly good job of it. And then went on then to HUD, Housing and Urban Development Chair, and was more or less routed out of there then because of this affair that was brought to light, about which he lied. Then I can't help but go back to the fact that he lied simply because of society's, or can you substitute the word religion's, attitude towards sex. And what he did sexually was not anything different from what hundreds and thousands of other people do,
Millions.
the people who are condemning him.
Yeah, of course,
all the
because
time.
everybody likes to point the finger, because it
And
kind
then
of helps their guilt.
Of course,
the
it's
first
fed.
stone, yeah.
It's fed by partisan politics. There's no doubt about that. But I really feel so sorry for the man, because he was such an upright individual, very dedicated to the improvement of society, and it's ruined because of a religious pressure.
Well, of course, I still won't forgive him for that stupid Alamo Dome thing that didn't work out right, and I won't forgive him for the pink thing that he set up over there without even thinking about it. I mean, it was just build it and then knock it down. I mean, he's cost us money too. I voted for him every time, and that was when I started voting early. I was so afraid I'd get sick and couldn't cast my vote. I was determined to get him in, and I said that once to him when we met at a book signing. And I found out he didn't even take the pen up and sign the book there. They just had a pile with his name in it, and I got one of those. And I said to him, I'm rushing off to vote because I'm scared something will happen. And he just kind of looked right through me, cold. And I thought, gee whiz, I mean, I'm a supporter, and I may not be the greatest person in the world, but I would have expected a little. I mean, I just love it. If people ever say anything good to me, I'm practically sitting on their lap saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, licking their faces. I get, I guess, too grateful for things because there's so little of it. And I give that kind of adulation to people, so that's enough of Henry. We'll stop there, but anyway.
Harvey, you're making the point about, it's not right for the church to be shooting at his morality, it's a false issue, but can the legal system, can the FBI really shoot at any politician for lying? That's the nature of politicians.
That's what they do for a living.
Wouldn't our whole
job,
Congress, our whole...
But I also want to point out that Henry Cisneros is a Democrat and a liberal and so forth, but it also happens the other way around. The Democrats have also been responsible for shooting down some wonderful Republicans over this issue of sexuality. And it is nobody's business but the individuals concerned. But I don't know if religion really promotes such behavior, but the people who are so ready to attack somebody because of his sexuality are always religious people.
Yeah, they are. They have this dual
This is
feeling
another
about it.
thing I mentioned, I think, in the last program, that Europe, particularly Germany, looks very askance at America's attitude towards religion. It also looks very askance at America's attitude towards sex. And the type of thing that's happening to Henry Cisneros could never happen in Germany. I remember the time that Manfred Werner, who was the head of NATO, he was a German, he was head of NATO at one point, and he was caught in a gay bar. And he indeed admitted that he had a gay lover. And there was a German religionist character who tried to blow this up into something enormous, and he started circulating a referendum to get Werner deposed. He couldn't get one person to sign the referendum in the entire country.
How about that?
Now, look what would happen if something like that would
Oh,
take place
mercy.
in America.
Well, you know what has happened in the past.
we
We've
see
had
it
some terrible...
constantly.
Oh, I know it. That was another thing that's on here, homosexuality and the Bible. We ought to just discuss that at greater length in the next segment. And anything else that you all would assisted suicide. There's a good one. And let's see, go back to the capital punishment, that woman that's coming up. Now, she found Jesus in prison, and now everybody thinks she's been redeemed, and she would be... I just don't want anybody killed. I'm sorry about that. I don't believe that capital punishment is any kind of deterrent. I think it's cruel.
And the state should not have that kind of power.
It shouldn't. That is so awful. And I know there have been innocent people that have been killed. Now the DNA thing, when they can do testing on things, they're finding out so many. There have been a couple, and then George Bush said, well, I'm going to let the courts take the action because I really shouldn't sign a what do you call it, pardon or something. So, well, okay, beady-eyed governor, that's all. You won't do it. You won't do it, yes.
Who is this moral majority guy from Virginia?
Oh, yeah, Jerry Falwell.
Jerry Falwell.
Yeah, uh-huh.
No, I was thinking Pat Robinson.
Pat Robinson.
Yeah,
He's from...
Okay, he was on with Charles Colson the other night on a station, and they were discussing this lady who was about to be executed.
Yeah.
You know, and they came to the conclusion that she shouldn't be, although they were strongly in favor of capital punishment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because she was converted, you know, that they are opposed to her being executed.
Why? What is it?
Well, it's just that if you look at the whole situation, you got to look. He says you have to look at the whole situation. If you look at the whole situation, you come to the conclusion that she shouldn't be executed.
Let's see the big picture.
See the point. The point I picked up from them is Christians want to determine who they execute and who they don't, and they don't want us given standard that you do a certain thing, you get executed.
You do it.
They want to decide who is deserving of execution and who isn't. Which is a part of the intellectual dishonesty of religionists.
Religion, yes, I quite agree on that. There is so much dishonesty.
And they can change that rule tomorrow if they don't like it, you know.
Absolutely, but that woman got saved, so now she should be saved the other way. I just think we don't need such a barbaric custom. I think it sets a terrible example, and it just brings out all the hatred in everybody and punishment and
probably increases the number of capital offenses. It models violence. But see, so do the tendency of our country to rush off into various wars, and the use of force. It models that for the youth and for other people. It's a mark of acceptance. It's okay to solve your problems violently. You see.
I know.
We hear that particularly right now with Iraq. So many people say, well, go in there and nuke them.
Yes.
Level the country.
Think of this president who said, if you don't believe in God, is our time up?
Yeah, well, you didn't have to say it, but it is. But I'll tell you what, we'll be right back with the next program on the Bible and religion and its influences on our society. And Chet will be the first one to speak. Thank you. Come back and see us next week. Bye for now.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure. My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure. My thoughts will not cater to duke or dictator. No person can deny, decadent and sin fry. No